Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Just to give you a little bit of background on why I'm recording this morning I gave a keynote talk for the Utah Academic Library Consortium Library Futures Conference. And in the room, it went great. Unfortunately, I learned after the fact that for the people who were tuning in virtually, that they only were able to see half of it, and then the recording went haywire. So, in the interest of making sure everyone gets to see the whole talk, and also so anyone who wants to see the talk can check it out, I'm recording it again now. So, as you can see here from the slide, I'm Rebecca Cummings. I'm the Director of Digital Matters at the University of Utah Marriott Library, and I really hope you enjoy this recording of my keynote for the Library Futures Conference. Now, I will admit that when Shane, the conference chair, reached out to me and he asked me to speak on the topic of library futures, I felt a little bit unsure of how exactly I wanted to approach this topic amidst rapid technological change, political uncertainty, and even specific attacks on libraries and higher education. Now, most days when I'm thinking about AI, which admittedly I do a lot lately, I feel like I have more questions than answers. And I also have this inherent distrust of anything in the library futurism realm, especially of library predictions, which many of us know is this like whole genre unto itself. Now, in fact, just a few years ago, my colleague Anna Nietrauer and I, we built a corpus of over 200 articles from the past 60 years, predicting either the death or the future of the library. And oh my gosh, some of these predictions were just wild, including this one here up on the screen, which personally, I don't think has aged particularly well. One of my favorite articles that we looked at wasn't even that old. It was from 2017, and it was first published in 24/7 Wall Street and then republished in USA Today and elsewhere. And it listed libraries as one of the 25 dying professions in the United States, claiming that there had been a library workforce attrition rate of 80% in the previous 10 years, second only to the videotape rental industry. So the implication of the article being that a future career in libraries was more or less as promising as one at your local Blockbuster. Now, in typical librarian fashion, we swiftly fact-checked that data, which was, of course, completely inaccurate, forcing them to issue a retraction shortly thereafter. Well done, librarians. Now, I should probably move on because I do have so much to talk about, but these predictions, they were just too good, including this curmudgeonly rant from 2007, dramatically titled The End of Books and the Death of Libraries. Subscribing libraries pay a website maintenance fee, but I don't know what they get for it. Moreover, I'm tired of being told that thanks to websites, capital W, students can write their papers at 3 a.m. without going to the library, as though that merits commendation. At 3 a.m., they don't do research, they plagiarize. How many students really do consult online resources at 3 in the morning? Even if there are a lot of them, they should not be encouraged in their dereliction. They belong in the library, using books, browsing in books, marking books, mutilating books, and getting an education. Whew. I don't know about you all, but I am dying to know what Matthew Bercoli's take on AI would be. I suspect that he would be the first one stocking up on blue books. But Bercoli man, he was not done. He went on to give us, librarians, a piece of his mind as well, saying, I do not know why librarians are eager to collaborate in the destruction of their profession by means of their ecstatic participation in the destruction of that irreplaceable research instrument, the card catalog, and their orgiastic discarding of books and newspaper runs. Whew, harsh words there. Okay, now easy as it is to make fun of these predictions from 2007 and 2017, I also don't want to pretend like nothing was lost during these previous technological shifts. As a society, we don't read as closely or as deeply or as frequently as we used to. Literacy rates have fallen. Our attention spans and our frustration tolerance has plummeted. More information at our disposal 24 hours a day hasn't necessarily made us wiser or better informed or any closer to collective truth. And yet, putting those challenges aside for a moment, libraries are still here and we are still as relevant, if not more so, than ever. People still seek information and stories and help and connection and beautiful public spaces. I am grateful that as a profession, we didn't take all the predictions to heart or listen to the naysayers like Brucoli, who insisted on the right way to consume information. We evolved, we adapted, we let go of the card catalog, however wistfully, when it no longer met the information needs of our communities. Now, in case you haven't heard, we are in the midst of another big technological shift. Anybody want to take a guess at what that is? That's right. Now, I am so curious, and I know this is a recording and we're not in the room together, but when you see this come up on the screen, what feelings come up inside of you? I don't want you to overthink it, but I'm curious like how your body responded when you saw this on the screen. Or what was like one word that popped into your head? Was it excitement? Anxiety? Skepticism? Resignation? When I pose this question to everybody in the room today, I asked them to first tell me, like, what is your main feeling? And I would say, a good 30% were like, oh, I'm feeling excited about this. Another large portion said we're feeling anxious or skeptical about it. And then, of course, when I asked at the end, can you raise your hand if you feel a combination of all these different things? Everybody in the room raised their hands. And my guess is that you're probably feeling similarly. AI is everywhere. It is in everything. It is in our discourse, in our technology, and as someone who spent the last week doing reviews, it is in our grant proposals. Whether or not you personally use ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, AI is sorting your inbox and it's correcting your typos, which I don't know about you, but I am feeling pretty tired of AI telling me that I can't use 2 exclamation points. I am an enthusiastic person, AI. Stop trying to punctuation shame me. So annoying. AI is curating your playlists. It's anticipating your coffee orders. It is predicting traffic before you hit the road. It's screening your job applications. For years now, it has been approving your credit card purchases and deciding whether or not you and your friends and your family are eligible for healthcare or public services. If you are in the criminal justice system, it could be used in your sentencing decisions and deciding whether or not you are eligible for parole. Recently, I was on a podcast with my dear friend and collaborator, Dr. Elizabeth Calloway. I'll probably call her Lizzie throughout the presentation, who said, AI is not just a technical project. It's not even mainly a technical project. It's a cultural one. And I would contend that within that cultural sphere, the biggest impact that AI is having on our world is the way that people consume, produce, and share information. And that is right smack dab in the middle of the work that we do. Now, much of the AI that I referred to on the previous slide was happening before large language models rocked our world in November 2022 with the release of ChatGPT 3.5. ChatGPT was the fastest growing consumer application in history, reaching 100 million active users in 2 months, which is even more astounding when you consider the rates of adoption for other popular technologies. Spotify and Facebook took 4.5 years to get that many users. Netflix, probably due to the subscription model, took over 10 years. Even the viral sensation of TikTok took 9 months to get that many users. Our college seniors have been using these tools since their freshman year. They don't even know college without generative AI. Some of them, as I'm sure you know, have genuinely used AI to enhance their learning, using it to brainstorm ideas, or as a tutor, or a helpful collaborator, or for greater efficiencies on less important tasks so that they can focus on deep learning. Others, as I'm sure you also know, have used AI tools to aggressively not learn, especially when they don't think that the learning or the assignment is going to be important for their future career or development. The other day, I tried to create like a little bit of a safe space in my lab to talk openly about the use of these AI tools with some of my students. And one student told me that in his web development class, the professor had obviously not updated his syllabus since 2022, and that there was nothing he was asking of the class that couldn't be done in seconds by AI. My students saw it not only as acceptable, but as ethical to save his time and attention for work that required human judgment and to cultivate skills that can't easily be outsourced to AI. Our students know that they are about to enter a workforce where in a lot of these fields, use of these tools isn't an option, where the students who are adept in co-piloting with AI and using their time efficiently are more likely to be hired in an increasingly competitive job market. Now, the focus of my talk today isn't on pedagogy, but I think that this is a hugely important area, and I am so excited to attend a couple of the other talks today who are focusing on that topic. But suffice it to say, AI is rapidly changing the way that we search for information. You may have seen on the previous slide that 42% of our students are using LLMs for advanced search engines. And that's not even accounting for the fact that Google AI Overview is usually its top search result lately. It's changing the way that we read, with more and more people using AI to summarize and interpret long texts instead of engaging directly with challenging material. It's changing the way that we write, the way that we learn, the way that we connect. And again, even if your personal reading and writing habits haven't changed, it has unequivocally changed the way that our students do these things. My favorite analogy lately, that I have to give my friend Jared credit for, is that AI literacy is starting to feel a whole lot like sex education. Our students are using it. It's up to us to teach them how to use it responsibly. And sometimes it is really hard to do that objectively. As we've already seen, there is a lot of earned skepticism in this room around AI. Libraries and AI are not starting off on the right foot. In one corner, you have libraries. As a professional value, we respect the rights of authors and creators and pay for the use of their copyrighted materials while making sure that they get attribution for their intellectual contributions. AI models, on the other hand, are trained on data scraped off the internet, including from our own digital archives, without consent, attribution, or compensation. Libraries have a long and beautiful tradition of respecting the privacy of our patrons. We strive to create spaces for open inquiry, and we don't share patron information with anyone. And over here, we have AI companies who rely on mass surveillance data and behavioral tracking to sell back more efficient advertisements to their users. Libraries exist to democratize knowledge, making it freely available for everyone. AI, at least in its current form, centralizes control of information into the hands of a few powerful tech companies. And lastly, at our best, libraries empower our users. We carefully select our collections based on quality, authenticity, patron demand, the needs of our community. We try to reflect a wide range of views and perspectives, and then we let you go figure out what you want to read. Now, in contrast to that, early deployments of AI on social media and elsewhere use recommendation engines that optimize for one thing and one thing only: engagement, time on device, whatever content is going to keep you clicking and scrolling the longest for profit. And it just so happens that that selection criteria is pretty terrible for shared truth, for civic discourse, social cohesion, mental health, misinformation, and a host of other negative outcomes. To borrow a phrase from Hamilton, libraries and AI seem to be starting off this conversation as diametrically opposed foes. But here is the silver lining that I keep observing in the dozens and dozens of conversations that I've been having around AI. There are a critical mass of people who know that as a society, we messed up with early deployments of AI, and that we should have put guardrails around it to protect us, and especially to protect our kids. And they are worried that reckless AI is going to make things so much worse. They are looking around saying, we don't like this, we don't like where it's headed, but we also don't know what to do. I see an opportunity right now to claim our mantle as information professionals who are already embedded in nearly every community and every institution, who understand the current information environment and have a positive vision for responsible and human-centered ethical AI use. My bold claim for today is that wherever AI touches the information space, libraries and librarians need to be a part of that conversation. And let me even go a step further. More than a part of that conversation, we need to be centered in that space, owning our expertise, standing in our values, and believing in the ability of libraries to make a difference. There are 3 ways that I see libraries playing a critical role in shaping a responsible AI future. Number 1, libraries can be a model for what responsible AI adoption and deployment looks like. Number 2, we can serve our communities by mitigating the harms of reckless AI. And number 3, we can advocate fearlessly for the essential role of libraries in an AI future. Today, I'm going to focus on what examples of these things might look like in higher education, because that's where those of us who are listening to this talk have the biggest impact. But I also believe that this work very much needs to be done in conversation and in conjunction with our K through 12 and our public library colleagues. So let's start with number 1. Libraries can model responsible AI adoption and deployment. Last month, I was invited to speak on an AI Futures panel alongside leaders from industry, government, and academia. And if you know any of the other people who are here in this photo, you know that there are some serious heavy hitters up there. Was I feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome? Absolutely. Was I also grateful to have the opportunity to be a voice for libraries and humanities in that space? Yes. The very first question to kick off the panel was, what does the future of AI look like? And my response was, we don't know. The future of AI is yet to be determined, and we get to decide what that future looks like. There is no going back to a future where AI doesn't exist, but whether or not it proves to be a force for good, it's up to us. How we fund it, how we deploy it, how we regulate it, and how we educate people to use and develop it. Do we want AI that will be a technology that displaces human labor, that strains our environmental resources, that leads to greater concentrations of wealth and power, that erodes our privacy and further degrades the information landscape? Or do we want to put incentives and guardrails in place to unlock the most exciting promises of AI, to cure cancer and lead to incredible scientific discoveries, to increase efficiency, unlock human creativity, improve disaster response, personalize education and healthcare, and to create wealth that benefits more than a few. I love this quote from Dr. Alondra Nelson that says, "It is not inevitable that AI will lead to great public benefits. The outcomes that many of us hope for or anticipate are not inherent features of the technology itself. These benefits will not emerge only from the invisible hand of market dynamics. They must be cultivated in partnership with civil society and with our democratic institutions." Oh, so how then, as a democratic institution, do libraries model responsible AI adoption and deployment? First, libraries need to tell a different story about AI, one where we don't move fast and break things, especially when what's being broken are people and society and the natural world that we depend on. One where we don't engage in zero-sum thinking or in an arms race where if someone else is getting ahead, that means that we are inevitably falling behind. One where we don't treat privacy like collateral damage in exchange for the convenience that these tools afford us. In the library world, we are just beginning to write our AI story. Within our institutions, there are AI optimists who are full steam ahead, eager to embrace innovation and efficiency, which I totally understand. Who doesn't love innovation and efficiency? But there are also others in our institutions who justifiably worry that over-reliance on these tools hollows out the core mission of the university and ignores everything that we know about the necessary time and friction required to create educated citizens. In their wonderful book, hold it up here to show you the cover, Generative AI in Libraries, Claiming Our Place in the Center of a Shared Future, Michael Hannigan and Chris Rosser refer to these polar opposites as prophets and priests, with the priestly role being to maintain the status quo, while the prophets point to a new horizon. Hannigan and Rosser argue that both voices are critical in thoughtful implementation of AI, that rather than rejecting AI wholesale, which honestly isn't even really an option, or uncritically adopting the tools, that we can experiment with deployments of AI guided by our mission and grounded in our values. Values like transparency, which means that if and when we adopt tools like AI chatbots for search or reference, our patrons will clearly know when they are interacting with a human and when they are interacting with predictive software. That if or when we use AI for cataloging or metadata creation, that information will also be reflected in the record. Library deployments of AI should be human-centered, starting with the question, what does this use of AI do to and for humans? Does it help fulfill our mission of connecting them to information and to each other? AI is a tool. It can be used primarily to increase profit and shareholder value, and carefully deployed, it can be an incredible tool for learning and discovery. Which leads to a third guiding principle: intentionality. We need to relentlessly ask ourselves, is this a good problem for AI to solve? Because AI is great at some things, like pattern recognition or finding a needle in a haystack. Recently, I was talking to a historian at the University of Utah who was so excited because he had found an AI tool that allowed him to identify 7 oral histories out of a corpus of 10,000 at the Library of Congress. And he said to me, he's like, I could have read oral histories my whole life and never been able to find exactly the ones that the AI tool was able to identify using what it's good at, finding things out of a whole lot of stuff. Personally, I thought this was a great deployment of AI. But AI is not the solution to every problem. Some people, especially those with financial incentives, act as if it is. Oh, you're feeling lonely? Well, here's an AI companion bot that you can talk to anytime that will constantly affirm you and make you feel like someone really understands you. There is, of course, great irony in the fact that tech companies have increased loneliness by driving us perpetually online. And now they are selling AI back to us as the antidote to loneliness, like arsonists masquerading as firefighters. It seems worth pausing and asking, like I've heard my friend Lizzie do several times, whether loneliness is a tech problem. I think when we take that step back, we can say, no, of course not. Loneliness is a social problem that requires a human solution. Other values we might emphasize when deploying AI are curiosity, play, rigor. Libraries are a great place to test and evaluate these tools with our patrons, creating AI sandboxes where students can explore these tools critically with guardrails. Over the summer, I was the co-director for a summer institute for higher education faculty called Humanities Perspectives on Artificial Intelligence. My colleague Lizzie and I had planned this for over 2 years, developing curriculum, recruiting amazing guest speakers, selecting 30 participants from an incredible pool of 120 applicants, and planning the logistics of hosting scholars from all across the country. Now, sadly, our institute hit a major speed bump in April when our NEH funding was terminated by DOGE. But I am so grateful to the Marriott Library, to BYU, to Tanner Humanities Center, and others who believed in our work and stepped in to fund the institute. As a group, we learned about the technological core of AI, how these models are trained, and why they work the way that they do, as well as their inherent limitations. We learned about bias in the training data from Lauren Klein, the author of Data Feminism, and practiced doing data biographies with Kaylee Alexander, our incredible data librarian, to better understand how human bias enters the system. Matt Winters, the AI specialist for the Utah State Board of Education, came and talked to us about AI in education, and primarily how it's being implemented at a K through 12 level. And we were even lucky enough to spend the day at Adobe down in Lehigh, learning about how Adobe is thinking about corporate responsibility and AI. We talked about the material conditions of AI, including its reliance on natural resources like water and rare earth minerals, and the invisible human labor behind AI systems. I spent a day leading a discussion around how AI is degrading our information landscape with deepfakes, AI slop, and misinformation. We talked about current and potential policy interventions to reduce harm. Spoiler alert, we did not solve the problems of AI in 2 weeks. But as a group, we walked away with a far greater understanding of AI, both its technological core and our role as educators and researchers in helping shape the ethical and human-centered AI future that we want to see. Which brings us to the second role of libraries in an age of AI, and that is mitigating the harms of reckless AI, both existing harms and those that we can see right on the horizon. Now, I just wanted to highlight here a host of brilliant scholars who have been sounding the alarm for a decade on things like facial recognition systems that misidentify darker skin tones at much higher rates, resulting in Black men and women being wrongfully detained and arrested for crimes they didn't commit. Resume processing AI that discriminates against women, and Google ad algorithms that show high-paying executive roles primarily to men, even when women are equally qualified. Nearly every day, we see examples of rogue AI who jump their guardrails and do things that their programmers never intended, like the chatbot who recently tried to convince a New York Times reporter to fall in love with it and leave his wife and run away together. I feel like we are starting to see these things all the time. And the harms, they are accelerating. Over the past 2 years, there has been what the New York Times has called an epidemic of deepfake nudes in middle and high school, causing untold amounts of psychological distress and reputational harm, mostly to our adolescent girls, robbing them of their dignity and privacy, while teenage boys are being marketed these nudify apps through advertisements in their online gaming and social media communities. This is not okay. There is literally no good reason for these apps to exist, let alone be marketed to our teenagers, except to degrade and objectify others. In April of this year, 16-year-old Adam Rain died by suicide. Over the course of months and thousands of messages that you can see printed here, the AI chatbot that he had been confiding in discouraged him from talking to his friends or family about his suicidal ideations, coached him through methods of ending his life, and even offered to write his suicide note. As a parent of 3 kids, this is the reckless AI that keeps me up at night. And we're still just at the beginning. Oh, I know this is a lot. This is heavy, heavy stuff, and I hope it weighs on us enough to spur us into action. And I also know that libraries are not going to solve these multiple overlapping crises single-handedly. But how do we help? It seems logical, at least to me, to start with the most obvious one, our polluted information environment. Here, libraries need to be prepared with age-old interventions as well as some new ones. As the internet becomes increasingly a mess of scams and hoaxes and digital manipulation and AI slop, libraries can be a port in the storm, providing access to vetted, high-quality information and AI literacy grounded in the ACRL framework, which actually holds up remarkably well in an age of AI. We can host programs and guest speakers on algorithmic bias, deepfakes, fraud, and AI-driven misinformation. Perhaps working with community partners like the Department of Consumer Protections or the Utah Office of AI Policy. We can help develop AI-informed pedagogy that no longer over-relies on a single culminating product like an essay as evidence of learning. Instead, we develop new ways to evaluate process, thinking, and collaboration. We can create trust-building opportunities with institutions experiencing a crisis of trust, such as journalists, scientists, and policymakers, giving the public a chance to learn how and why they do the things that they do, and the process they use, and how that stands in contrast to less trustworthy sources of information. Now, this section, mitigating the harms of reckless AI, this literally could have been the entire hour. There is so much work to do. So for time's sake, I just want to introduce you to what I'm calling the Circle of Concern Library Edition. Circle of Concern AI Edition and the Circle of Control Library Edition. Now, some of you might be familiar with this general framework, which acknowledges that there are nearly an infinite amount of things that we could be worrying about at any given moment. In the AI world, that might include things like censorship, surveillance and privacy, truth and trust, loneliness, autonomous weapons of war, bias and discrimination. But realizing that in our worlds, we're only really in control of a few things. By focusing our attention on what we can actually do, we solve our energy for where we can make a difference. So I ask you, within your circle of control, where can you apply your expertise, your passion, your energy? Are you most concerned with the breakdown of civic discourse? Then maybe consider hosting a series of brave conversations in your library meant to increase understanding and connection rather than to debate or change minds. Or better yet, you could even recruit your students to facilitate these conversations while you create a space for them and coach them on strategies to do so. Are you most concerned with job displacement? While public libraries might take the lead on reskilling and lifelong learning, this seems like an area that is ripe for a public academic partnership. Maybe you want to make a difference with loneliness or social isolation. There are a million ways that we can make the library a place of human connection and belonging. As our world feels increasingly chaotic and uncertain, sometimes our intervention is just doing what we've done all along. Be a welcoming, friendly, comfortable space where people don't have to buy or believe anything to be there. I love this post from author Jonathan Edward Durham that says, "Sure, I go to the library for books, but also sometimes I just go to exist in a space that's welcoming, organized, comfortable, judgment-free, and run by knowledgeable, helpful, passionate people, because that energy is straight up medicinal." Agreed. Libraries have never just been about a transfer of information. They are deeply human institutions that represent the best of what society can be when it invests in its communities. Now, this part will be fast, I promise. Many of you know that over the past several years, a lot of my energy has gone to advocating for libraries outside of where we normally have these conversations, trying to influence the general public and policymakers to show up for libraries through funding and better policy and to understand the great work that we do. One thing I've learned through this work is that librarians need to have a greater presence in these rooms where decisions are being made. Decisions that affect libraries directly, and decisions where we have unique expertise that can inform important conversations around education, information, digital equity, privacy, and community infrastructure. If we don't show up in these rooms and in these conversations, other people will. And quite frankly, I don't trust anyone to drive this conversation around AI more than I trust librarians. So this is my one slide to encourage you to use your voice and to partner with people who care about what you care about, to develop relationships with your representatives, to make public comment, to write that op-ed, and to show up and speak up for libraries. In case this wasn't clear from my opening slides, I am not a fan of library predictions, which tend to be steeped in hyperbole and all too often reinforce the persistent fantasy that libraries can be replaced by technology. You know what I like a whole lot more than predicting library futures? Building them. Energetically building spaces and services and staff to meet the information moment that we are in right now. Holding lightly to tools and skills that change quickly, including the card catalog, ChatGPT, or anything else Brucoli may have deemed an irreplaceable research instrument. But holding firm to our mission, our values, and our commitment to the communities that we serve. Because whether you are an AI optimist or an AI skeptic, that is where our future begins. Thanks, everybody. And again, my apologies that you lost our recording halfway through. I hope this helps and you got a chance to enjoy the whole thing. Please do feel free to reach out to me at rebecca.cummings@utah.edu. Hope you have a great day. Bye.